All right, people. This is part 2 of the SA88 52mm big bore kit install. Before we get started doing anything, let's go ahead and take a look what comes in the box. Since we're doing the SA88, let me show you what you will receive. Clearly there will be more packing material in there, but let's start by pulling out. You'll receive 52mm cylinder. Here are your clips for the wrist pin on the cylinder, on the piston, wrist pin itself, and the cylinder. And one thing that you will get when ordering this kit is you will find that we send it with the piston already in the cylinder, and the cylinder is oiled up. You probably want to add a little bit more oil. You can dab oil on your finger and smear it in there, but you can see my finger's pretty oily. But we try to make this as easy as possible for you. So we put the rings on, gap the rings, clock the rings, and get the cylinder in that, or get the piston in that cylinder for you. And so what that does is makes it quite a bit easier for people. When you're ready to install that cylinder, you don't have to take the piston out. Just have to slide the piston out enough to get that wrist pin in. And careful you don't slide it too far, or you'll have to recompress those rings. But you get it slid out about that far, and that way you can slide the wrist pin right in. It saves a lot of hassle. If you're watching this video just for instructions and you're doing another kit, I do have other videos that show the process of ring clocking and install. So, take a look at my other videos. But this kit is going to come with the cylinder and piston already together like that. So let's go ahead and set that aside. You got your gaskets. Exhaust gasket, exhaust studs, and 64mm rocker arms. And then you've got your head. The head is 64mm valves, so you got to use those 64mm rocker arms. Large valve head, so it's 23mm intake, 20mm exhaust. There's a couple other minor things. You get some stickers. Who doesn't like stickers? And an instruction sheet. This sheet does show ring clocking, as well as a bunch of other tips and some specifications and some links to this video even, but links to helpful links. So keep all that in mind. That's what you get. I'm going to readjust my camera here, and we will get to installing. Okay, let's get this kit installed. Now that you've got a fresh, clean base surface, you want to make sure this is clean. No old gasket or anything on there. If it's not clean and there's a chunk of gasket on there, you get an oil leak, and that's not good. That being said, first thing we're going to do is we're going to put these dowel pins on. And those go right there and right there. Make sure they're nice and seated. There we go. We will then put our base gasket on. The base gasket is the paper gasket. You want to be careful not to rip this. If you rip it, you're going to have to get another one, and you're going to be super mad and waiting longer to get it installed. So just be really careful installing this. See if I can do it without ripping it. Okay, with our gasket on there, next step is going to be cylinder and piston. Go ahead and get that to the point where it's out enough to slide that wrist pin in, and go ahead and put it on there. You're going to want to line up your crank in there. Make sure your chain comes up through. So you got your chain there. You can take your chain and, well, you can drop it. I'm supposed to make this look easy, but I'm a person too. Sometimes there's a little bit of struggling, but you can take your chain and kind of go like that. This point, grab your wrist pin, and let me see if I can, well, grab your wrist pin, come over to this side, and get this to where you can see right through the center of that crank, and slide your wrist pin in through the piston and in through the crank. And of course, I'm supposed to make this look super easy, and it is, but you know, sometimes it takes a little bit of jiggling around to get it right. There we go. Got her slid in there. What you need to do at that point is get the other clip on, which is like so. The other wrist pin clip. In the first video, I showed you how to remove them. It's the same to install. Go ahead and grab that clip with a pair of needle nose pliers and stick it in there and twist. Now, let's see if I can do this without struggling. Usually when I'm on camera, I try to make things look as easy as possible, but they end up looking harder than they need to sometimes. Because again, and be really careful not to drop it, which I just did. Let me find that. I'll be right back. All right, I did find it, and that brings me to another point. A good thing to do is to kind of get a rag around here so that if you do drop it, like I just did, it doesn't go into the bottom end of your motor, of your engine. So, okay, I've got a rag around there so that now when I drop it again, which I'll probably do, it won't go into the bottom end and cause me major grief. I would show you in more detail how to do this, but I'm just not a good enough cameraman to get it, and I don't know if my camera is good enough to catch it anyway, if I could zoom in properly, but it is really easy. You just twist it and then give her a push to make sure she's clipped in, and she is. So now that I got those clips in, that piston is attached to the crank, and we can go ahead and push this cylinder right on down. Get it on those guide pins, and there you go. Cylinder on. With the cylinder on, next step, once again, do not forget your dowel pins. You're going to have one right up here. Oop. Get that on there. And you will have one right down here. With those dowel pins on, you're going to put the head gasket on. Make sure you orient it the right way. The big side down. And you get your chain through it. And there we are. And actually, I skipped one thing. You're going to want to put your chain guide back in at this point. And the chain guide actually goes kind of behind this this head gasket. So really, let me show you. Let's make this video way longer than it needs to be. Get your chain guide put in first, then put your head gasket on. All right. So we got our chain guide in, we got our head gasket on, we got our cylinder in, we got in pointing up. It is marked in on the piston. Make sure of that. Don't put it in upside down. And so next step is going to be putting the head on. I'll be right back. With all that done, your gasket on there, your dowel pins on there, next step is super easy. You're going to grab your head and you're going to install your head. Once again, being careful not to lose that chain down into the bottom end. Just kind of carefully grab this, set that chain in there, get this set onto those studs. And carefully slide her on there. Grab that chain as you're sliding it on. Make it a little easier. Make sure that sits right down onto those dowel pins. And we are good. Next step is going to be cam timing. People struggle with timing. So give me a moment and I'll be right back. I'm going to show you all a little trick that I do that is probably going to be helpful for a lot of people. When it's at top dead center, it wants to settle, and it's not going to settle right at the mark. You want it at that mark. So what you can do is turn it to that mark. I'm going to have a hard time holding the camera and doing this at the same time, but let me see what I can do. And you're going to take a little wedge of cardboard and take that wedge and get it in there. Get it on that mark and then get that wedge in there and that'll hold it. The cardboard's not going to hurt anything. That's going to hold it on your mark. That way you don't need a second person and you can get your timing done. So we've got that in there. Let's go ahead and move up to putting the cam in. I'm going to readjust this camera and I'll show you the cam install. Lots of different cams you can use. For this install, I'm using the stock cam. I'm doing this install the way that probably 90% of you will. Sometime on down the road, you may want to install a performance cam, A9 cam. Lots of different ones out there. I know a lot of guys are using the SSPG. But for this install, we're going to go ahead and use the stock cam. So I showed you how to hold the crank at top dead center. That wedge is in there, so we're going to go ahead and get this cam installed. Take your cam and set her on that cradle there. And you want that large hole up. It's going to vary on some cams are slightly different, but want that large hole up, and you want these two small holes to line up with your head. Once you've got those in line, you can kind of tilt your cam and carefully slide your chain on. And there you have it. Those two holes are perfectly lined up. Over here we've got this at the T mark, and so that is good. Give me just a moment and I'll be right back. All right, so just like we did with the head and the cylinder, let's go ahead and get our dowel pins put in on this. Dowel pins are very important for alignment. Do not forget to put them in. So we got one up here and one down here. Get that seated. Okay, so we've got those dowel pins in. The next thing you're going to need to do is install your rockers. You do need to switch out your stock rocker arms from 69 millimeter to 64. I'm not going to show that on this little video. I do have a separate video that is dedicated to that, so you can look through and find that. It's very simple though. Okay, with your dowel pins on there and your 64 millimeter rocker arms installed on your rocker assembly, go ahead and take that assembly and slide her on. And there you go. She is in there. We already know that we've got our cam at top dead center. One thing to point out is you want the E on the rocker assembly to be down towards exhaust. It will only go on one way. Yeah, you could put it on the other way, but it'll clearly be incorrect because it won't sit over the cam properly. But E always goes towards exhaust. So with that on there, I'm going to grab my 4 nuts and washers and get this tightened down. Typically, I would be doing this with a torque wrench, but for the sake of people that may not have one, I'm going to show you a way to do it without the torque wrench. Essentially, what you do is get it hand tight, and then in an X pattern, quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, and then do it again. Quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn. I'm not going to bore you with watching me do every last bit of tightening on here, but I'll give you a sped up through it. Okay, with those studs tightened, the whole top end tightened on down, let's go ahead and reinstall the timing chain tensioner. Like I showed you before in the other video with this assembly, you want to take and press this down and press it all the way in. Grab your gasket, place your gasket there. Take your tensioner, set it on down on there. These are both 8 millimeter. Remember, we had left those in the old head so that we knew which bolts to use on the new head. So I pulled those. I'm not going to bore you with watching me tighten those. With those tightened, grab that tensioner bolt, that center bolt with the spring. Make sure the spring is on there. Set her down in the middle. push down, and you can hear the tensioner click down, and it'll click down until it provides the correct tension. Go ahead and get that started by hand, and then it's a 10 millimeter, and just tighten that right up. And that's all there is to that. Just get it snug. Don't turn it too hard, that will break. All right, so we've got our timing set. We've got tension on our chain. Next order of business is valve adjustment. There's been a lot of confusion on this. Valves are adjusted to between 0.003 inches and 0.005 inches. Some people even go as low as 0.002. I find that to be too tight, but every motor is going to run a little bit different, and you may need to make adjustments. I suggest setting both at 0.004 to start. I'm not going to go through showing you exactly how to do that valve adjustment on this video, but I have a separate video that shows in detail how to do that. So at this point, I have already adjusted those valves. All we need to do, put our valve cover back on. And take note that this is a non-EGR head. So this is blocked off already. So even though this is still on here, you can remove this. And in fact, I'll go ahead and show you. That is not, you don't need that anymore. Let's get it off there. It's 2 bolts, actually 3. They're 8 millimeter. Take those off. Pretty self-explanatory. I don't really need to show you every step of this, but since we're here, let's just do it. You can take those right off. And you'll see that comes off. This whole thing comes off. There's a little reed valve in here. You can take a bolt and just pop it out. No longer need that. Some guys will take a hacksaw or an angle grinder and cut this off. It's not necessary. It's not going to hurt anything to leave it on there. But at this point, go ahead and set that on there. You're going to want to get your 2 side bolts in and tighten down. I failed to mention that before. I'm going to get those 2 side bolts tightened and get the valve cover on, and then you're good to go. Put it back together. Get your exhaust on there, get your carb on there, and get to riding. I should mention, put the cooling shrouds back on. There's guys that'll tell you you don't need those cooling shrouds. You need those cooling shrouds. The cooling shrouds that cover the engine. Put them back on. That's about all I can tell you on that one. Take it or leave it. All right, and there you have it. Full install. Pull that wedge out of there and get your cooling shrouds back on. get it put back into the bike if you took it out of the bike. Most of the time I do it in the bike. For video purposes, it was easier to do it this way, but whatever you're doing, whatever's clever, get your exhaust on there, get your carb on there, do a little tuning, and do a bunch of riding. It's worth mentioning, I do my best, or did my best, to cover everything in these videos. I'm sure I breezed over some stuff. I've done this so many times that there's certain things I don't even think about. So if you have questions, feel free to comment and ask for more detail on something you may be confused about, or if I missed something, ask me. Feel free to message me. I am here to give you a hand if you need it. So good luck. Have fun.